Hello viewers, I have been getting a lot of requests to make a video on a short story written by Temsula Au, and the title of the short story is uh, An Old Woman, An Old Man Remembers. Okay, and beside going to deep analysis, now let's try to know about Temsula Au. Temsula Au, she born in October 1945, and she is an Indian poet, short story writer, and ethnographer. She is a retired professor of English at Northeastern Hill University, shortly NEHU, where she had taught since 1975. And she has also served as the director of Northeast Zone Cultural Center, Dimapur, between 1992 and 1997 on deputation from NEHU. Besides, in 2013, she has also received the Sahitya Academy Award for her short story called Laburnum for My Head. Now let's try to know about her poetic works. Number one is Songs That Tell. It was published in 1988. It is a collection of poems. Then Songs That Try to Say, 1992. Songs of Many Moods, 1995. Songs from Here and There, 2003. Songs from The Other Life, 2007. And when she was in the University of Minnesota as a Fulbright Fellow, she came in contact with the Native Americans. We all know about Native Americans. They are the Aboriginal people of America. And she learned about their culture, heritage, and especially their oral tradition. And this exposure has inspired her to record the oral tradition of her own community, Au Naga. So she belongs to Naga community, and in Naga community, there are many tribes and sub-tribes. So she belongs to Au Naga. And after returning from the University of Minnesota, she has worked on the oral tradition extensively for about 12 years, and she has also collected her myths, folktales, folklore, rituals, law, custom, belief system, and documented it. This ethnographic work was published in 1999 as the Au Naga Oral Tradition from Bhasha Publication Baroda, and this is also the most authentic document about Au Naga community, as it is written by a person who herself belonged to Au Naga community. And before going on to that story, which I will try to discuss here, and we must first know about Naga nationalism. Without knowing Nagaland and its political issues and social issues, we cannot comprehend the crux of that short story or fiction. So now, what is Naga nationalism? Okay, Naga nationalism, it is an ideology that supports the self-determination of Naga people in India, mainly in Nagaland and neighboring regions in Myanmar, and the furtherance of Naga culture. So according to Naga people, they believe that they should be governed by themselves, and they should not be under any other government or country. According to them, India has taken them and made them one of the parts of India, adamantly. But in reality, they had their own pre-kingdom, and they had a rule in their own world. But after the Britishers, when British came, and when they had also added Nagaland to as the part of Northeast British India, and from then on, India, Nagaland has been an integral part of India. Okay, that thing you should know. And to gain that old tradition, or to gain their old heritage and history, they have been fighting with Indian counterpart since time immemorial. Okay, so they are demanding Indian government that they must be given autonomy, they must be given freedom, liberty. Okay, and they have been fighting for it, and they have formed many nationalist group also, like NSCN, which they have been fighting for many decades, but till now no resolution has been received. Though both Indian government and NSCN, they had been talking. Okay, that's it. That's a little one drop in the ocean kind of thing I have told you. If you want to know broadly, please go through the Naga nationalism in YouTube or in Google. Then only things will be clear for you, as it will play an important role in this short story or book. That's why I have given you a brief introduction or background about the Naga nationalism. Okay, and according to Naga nationalism, whatever the fight they have been fighting since time immemorial, according to them, they want a free independent country called Nagaland, and in that Nagaland, they also want many regions where Nagas are inhabiting since centuries. Okay, like from Naga administrative areas of Myanmar, and neighboring land of Nagaland, like Assam and some parts of here, even Golaghat, Jorhat, Sibsagar, and Karbi Anglong. So they think they have been fighting for it, that they will build a country called Nagaland under many Naga sub-tribes. Okay, that's it. Whatever I know, I just try to give you that information. If I'm wrong, then you should correct me. Okay. So without any delay, now let's begin the discussion. Actually, some Naga groups, they share a common belief of their ethnogenesis as a distinct people. These groups include Angami, Sema, Rengma, Lotha, Jemi, Liangme, and Rongme. So if you want to know about them deeply, then you must visit their festival called Hornbill Festival. It is observed, celebrated during the first week of, first 10 days of December every year, and I had visited last year. It was in 2021, so it was a marvelous experience for me. If you want to know more about them, their culture, their uniqueness, you must go. Okay, and if you go, then please take some money also, because there are some foods are very expensive. That's it. So, according to this belief, the ancestors of the Naga, they live in harmony together at a place called Makhel, if I'm not wrong. I identified with the present-day Mao village of Makhel in Manipur, and alternatively believed to be near the Qingwin River in present-day Myanmar. And as their population grew, they decided to split and spread outside Makhel. According to the Heraka faith, the Naga people took an oath pledging that they would come together again and live as a kingdom. Got it? That's the thing. You will get Naga people in Myanmar also, and they have their own self-autonomous administration. And that too, NACN is demanding that they want that thing to in their Nagalim. And they have been fighting since centuries, okay, but not centuries, since decades. And that thing, our writer Temsula Ao, she has tried to depict here, and she has also tried to depict how this nationalism has crippled some of their societal values, okay. And she has also tried to depict how Anisian, the government term Anisian as insurgent group, but according to Anisian, they are not insurgent. They are revolutionary, one who has been fighting for their own freedom. So that struggle of Naga nationalist and Indian government, that thing the writer has tried to depict, what kind of consequences and ramifications they had to suffer due to this long war since independence, or even before the independence too. Okay, and this story, An Old Man Remembers, this is published in a short story collection called These Hills Call Home, Stories from the War Zone, and it was published by Jupan. And the former short story is also a collection of 10 short stories where it deals with the insurgency in Nagaland, where they have been fighting for their self-determination of the Naga community. So here, in the introduction of the book, she has mentioned like this, that more than half a century of bloodshed has marked the history of Naga people who live in the troubled northeastern region of India. Their struggle of an independent Nagaland and their counting search for identity provides the backdrop for the stories that make up this unusual collection, describing how ordinary people cope with the violence, how they negotiate power and force, how they seek and find safe spaces and enjoyment in the midst of terror. The author has also detailed a way of life under threat from the forces of modernization and war, and no one, the young, the old, the ordinary housewife, the willing partner, the militant who takes to the gun, and the young woman who sings even as she is being raped is untouched by the violence. Theirs are the stories that from the subtext of the struggles that lie at the internal fault lines of the Indian nation state. These are stories that speak movingly of home, country, nation, nationality, identity, and direct the reader to the urgency of the issues that lie at their heart. So, beside that, Temsula Ao has also, in this short story collection, These Hills Call Home, attempts to trace a feminist history of Naga people as they negotiate with their broken identities and endangered cultural ethos at the backdrop of the self-determination movement in the late 50s. Besides, or apart from that, Temsula Ao prefaces the collection of stories by making her intent clear that These Hills Call Home is a work of memory, as opposed to mainland national history, where Nagaland is victoriously referenced to as having become an Indian state on 1st December 1963. This collection of stories pertains to the Naga people's shared collective memory of what was lost. Ao is aware of the conflict of shifting through the memories of a violent past, as is exemplified in her story. An Old Man Remembers. Sashi hesitates as his grandson asks him about his past. So, this short story, it is also a nostalgia for the writer and for the many Naga people, because before the independence of India, they had been living their life in freedom, in liberty, and nobody had tried to invade them. And if somebody did, then they had given the befitted reply. But after the Britishers left, when they left for their own country, at the time, India has, according to them, according to Naga people, that India has adamantly, stubbornly taken them in this newly independent country, India. And as Nagaland was a part of Assam at the time, and Assam was taken as a part of British India, and later as this, what you call it, mainstream India. That's why their voice was very less. But still, before the independence and after the independence too, and still right now too, they have been fighting for their lost heritage, history, and culture. And that thing the writer has tried to depict here, that they have lost some remarkable memories, remarkable freedom, which cannot be written by words or by any medium of transmission. And here she says that in the character Sashi actually hesitated as his grandson asked him about his past. That what that person will say, that before the arrival of British, we had enjoyed liberty, we had our own kingdom, we have been living in our own way. What that person will say. So that pain, the writer is trying to say that his grandson asked him about his past. Now, what he will say? Okay, so that's a very kind of big dilemma uh, for the character of this short story. And here she described like this: as opposed to mainland national history, where Nagaland is victoriously referenced to as having become an Indian state on 1st December 1963. So we all know that Nagaland became a state on 1st December 1963. This collection of stories pertains to the Naga people's shared collective memory of what was lost. Ao is aware of the conflicting of shifting through the memories of a violent past, as is exemplified in her story, An Old Man Remembers. Clear? So Temsula House, she has also centered her stories in these hills called home on characters that reveal the gendered undertones of nationalism and the violent it sanctioned. And our short stories, it also depicted how the armed response of the state forces to the self-determination movement led by the peoples of Nagaland gave way for centuries of masculinist war-mongering, relegating the status of the common folk to casualties and spoils. Temsula's house characters are all inadvertently caught in a gruesome male-driven minefield they call home, either as an informant in need of money or as a wife of a man fighting the state forces, while some make it out alive due to sheer presence of mind, some do not. Okay, this is a typical story. Okay, if you are fighting against the government in any way, then the chance of survival is very less, right? The government will try everything to dominate you. They will try to suppress you, and when they will suppress you, then its opposite counterpart, they are often crushed. Okay, they are often murdered, killed for that thing, and if someone is dead due to that war of insurgency or nationalism, then actually common people, they suffer a lot. Their family will suffer, their relative will suffer, and the innocent soul or common man will suffer. So that thing the writer has tried to say, that what they have got since the beginning, they have been fighting, but only their own people have been killed. And this Hill's call home exposes the rationalization of the army presence as the male protector of feminized land. The collection of stories is rife with mentions of army rebel situations to depict the inflated tactics of the army to fabricate terror and justify their presence as guards against the other rebels. The stories from an organic whole of the terror that grabs the entire populace of a region. A child's fascination for vehicles cost him his life at the hands of an officer drunk with power, and old man laments a childhood lost to violence. Here you can see common people are suffering due to this war between the government and the nationalist faction or the insurgent group, right? And the feverish national building effort shattered the cultural ethos and aspirations of the Naga peoples. Merenla in the new chapter symbolizes the uncertainty and dejection that the promise of nationalism held for the marginalized. So this is another chapter from the same book. And this Hills Call Home, it also exposes the rationalization of the army presence as the male protector of a feminist land. So government has deployed army to end or to suppress this rebellion or nationalist that group or the insurgent group. So if some kind of disturb will occur, then the government will always use army to end it, right? If it is talking against the nation's sovereignty, then. So that the writer is trying to say that they always tend to use army, and they will work as a male protector in their family's land. And Temsula House, this is called home. It is also a poignant study in the hyphenated nation-state identity of the Naga people, a monolithic marker that undermines their diversity. Moreover, since their cultural identities are intricately rooted in their lands, the forced relocation of tribal communities by state forces and non-native migration perpetuated by urbanization in the region threaten their ways of life. The stories express the anxieties of the common folk as they struggle to negotiate with the shifting demographics and the resultant changes in the power dynamics between the different tribes. It was the most humiliating insult that was inflicted on the Naga psyche by forcibly uprooting them from the soil of their origin and confining them in an alien environment. So this is another narrative from the text. The fractures in the cultural identities also led to a transformation in the political landscape of Naga region. However, as Temsula explores, the new polity is an offshoot of the traditional Naga polity, driven on the principle of the exclusion of women from political representation. So here, Temsula, she has also tried to depict how her own culture, Naga culture or the Naga community is based on patriarchy, where their female voices are unheard, they are unnoticed, and they are often ignored. So that thing also the writer is trying to represent or depict here. And she's saying that often in their society, women are not treated as they should be treated. And she says that, however, as Temsula expressed, the new polity is an offshoot of the traditional Naga polity, driven on the principle of the exclusion of women from political representation. Means in Nagaland, you will not get women holding any political seat, right? And but nowadays, I think this year, I have some Konyak. I'm not able to recall her name, but Konyak, maybe some Konyak. And she is the first woman from the Nagaland who is representing in Rajya Sabha as MP. So that thing the writer is trying to say that women are always excluded from the political representation. And Temsula also writes in her essay, benevolent subordination, that if men are reluctant to revolutionize the grassroots organizations for fear of going against the time-honored traditions, this reluctance is exemplified in the night as Imnala prepared to face the village court on the charges of illegitimate sexual relations with a married man. Similarly, the potmaker provides a peek into how the traditional Naga society dictates Sentila's dream as a potmaker, blurring the lines between dreams and dictated roles in benevolent subordination. So these are taken from another stories, so I will not explain. Now let's go on to the other places. Temsula House treatment of nature in these hills called home. It renounces the aestheticization of the Naga region, often used by the state to conceal their strong arm presence, and paints a picture that is true to the life and ways of the Naga peoples. Tinula's artist's journey through the rough terrain of Naga hills to reach her school in the Assam plains is an example of this. So this is also taken from another story. And an old man remembers that thing. I will tell you at the last of it, though I have already told you a little bit about it. Aubazda of exoticized and sensationalized manufactured portrait of Nagaland as a conflicted area to present a humanizing collection of stories. Temsula Ao's marvelizing adopting a narrative style representative of the peoples of Nagaland, and as an ethnographer carefully tracing the fault lines of land marred by centuries of bloodshed and violence. Then let's try to know about this. An old man remembers. This is also a short story from this collection. And an old man remembers. It is about a man. His name was Sasi, and he took an active part in the armed rebellion against the Indian army for a sovereign Nagaland, means for the freedom of the Nagaland. He had fought against the Indian army. And in the story, Sasi has returned home after a futile fight for a separate sovereign homeland, and is disillusioned by the life which he has led. No need to discuss here. In the society too, he cannot cope with the indirect taunts which are directed towards him. The majority in the society views him as someone who has killed innocent people, his grandson too. After hearing about the violent pursuits, begin to believe that his grandfather is a murderer. One day he confronts Sasi. Grandfather, is it true that you and grandfather Imli killed many people when you went in the jungle? The grandson, who has not seen the Naga movement, cannot comprehend the plight of citizens who are caught in the quagmire of violence. Sasi, who has never uttered a word to his grandson about his days in the rebellion, realized that if he did not tell his story to his grandson, then the grandson would carry a false image of the rebels in his mind. So it always happens. If you do not know the history, then we often try to make it which cannot be true. So that's why telling history is a very important thing to do, and that's why Sasi, grandfather of this boy, of his grandson, he had decided to talk about his revolt or rebellion against the Indian army or Indian government to form their own Naga freedom land. And though it was not successful, it became futile, but still he had not talked about this for a long time. But when his own grandson had asked him about that, then he had realized that he should not tell it, because if he did not do it, then he would form some misconception about the Naga nationalism. Okay, and Sasi told him about the circumstance that forced him to adopt arms. As the story progresses, we realize that the administrative machinery has committed violence in Sasi's village, and there were murders and rapes, and as a result, several young men from the village joined the insurgent groups. So it was the fact. So Sasi's act of telling stories about his life as a rebel points out an important role of memory in construction of the idea of home. The grandson's abode in the relatively peaceful present has in its scars of violence, which Sasi and others of his generation have experienced. Speaking about the importance of the past and imbuing meaning to the present, Vanessa in her book notes that the memories of any society are rooted in the past, yet they also penetrate the present because they are conjured up in the present. They reflect the past and the present in a single breath. The memories of the past which the grandfather conjures up orally for the grandson provides him with a new insight to the space which he believes to be his home. So that's it. I hope you have understood the title of the short story, An Old Man Remember. So here, an old man is remembering his own past of rebellion, revolt, and fighting insurgency against the Indian militant or Indian government or Indian army. So that thing he is forced to tell his grandson so that he can value, so that he can know the sacrifices or the main reason behind their taking up arms against the government or the army. So that's it. It is a very poignant tale. You must read the story. Without reading the story, if you are coming here, then it will not help you. And first you read the story, then come, or you first watch it, then you read the story. Both will work. Bye bye.